Hi, Devajyoti Das here. I am Product Success Architect here in ServiceNow. In today's session, we will go through classification codes of Enterprise Asset Management module. So, what are classification codes? Classification codes are features that enable segregation of EAM models and assets, thereby enabling organization of assets into multiple industry-based classification systems. It used to provide a level of categorization for the devices within enterprise asset management, which allows for enhanced reporting. Report on models and assets by classification codes is the major benefit that this feature enables in EAM. So let's see how these classification codes are getting loaded and used in EAM. We will be creating a source, then we'll import classification codes, create a code from model management, and assign that code to a model, and then we shall see how the dashboards can be filtered based on these classifications. So let's move into the workspace. We are now into enterprise asset workspace, and we can see the classification codes here under enterprise model management, this tab, which is classification. Right now we do not have any entries here. We shall first see how the classification codes are loaded in bulk. In order to load classification codes in bulk, we have to go to asset operations, and under classifications we could see import classifications. It also gives us the provision of creating a source, which we will see in the next step, how to create a source while creating the classification code from model. Coming to import classifications, here you could see the historical load, and if I open any one of them, we could see the details and the data that has been loaded in the staging table. However, I have deleted the codes from the system so that we can execute a very fresh batch and see how the codes work. So in order to import the classifications, one has to click on the new button, and you could see this form has two buttons, import and download template. We will first download the template by hitting this button, and the template gets downloaded. I have already created a template here with some sample data. So let's open this template. This is basically the template filled with some sample data, and we could see this template is with 12 entries. This is the template that gets downloaded for classification code loads. It has these columns that needs to be used. We have filled data until this. I have filled all the data, which is basically row 11, 10 records. Now the last but one category, row 12, does not have any source or model categories mentioned, and the last entry does not have model categories mentioned, but a test code is mentioned. Since no source is mentioned, this record will be not loaded or inserted in the table, but this one will be loaded in the table. At the same time, this code will be created as a source in the source table. So let's see how it works when this template is loaded using the import feature. Let's give it a name. I'll now attach the file that I have created with sample data and will import. The process has started. You could see the status here. Now it has completed the load. We could see 12 rows of the Excel has been loaded here, out of which 11 inserts has happened and one has been errored out. So let's see the detail in the staging table. We could see this one has errored out, which is MC01576, and this one corresponds to MC10157, MC01576. Yeah. So let's go into the model classification and refresh, and we could see 11 entries in classification table. Same time, we will go to the source table and we could see test code has been auto created from the bulk load. One important point to be noted here is ServiceNow recommends creation of source through the workspace manually only. Creation of sources through the bulk import template should be avoided. It is better to create the sources manually here first and then use the sources in the bulk import template. Now, the classification codes are loaded. We will try to map this load with existing model. We should keep in mind that all the codes that we have loaded is for model category medical device. One is blank model category. The behavior while mapping it to the models is basically all this code which are not with an empty model category will be available for medical models. However, the empty one should be available to all of them. So let's take a facility model and let's open this one. We need to go into scroll down to attribute section, or we just can collapse all this. In the attribute section, classification, while searching for a code, we could see only this one, which is of source test code, and the reason being this is the only code without any model category. Now going back to the medical devices here on the medical models, let's open this one and we'll scroll down to attribute section and search for our classification codes. We could see 11 of them are available. So let's tag a code with this model, which is a analog processor. So we have a relevant code here. Let's go with this one. And let's save it. Okay. Let's take another model. Let's see if I can check it from here. Okay, let's use this one and save. We have tagged a model with the classification code. Let's move into the manual creation of classification codes. For that, we have to click here under Enterprise Model Classification Code and this new button. And here we shall see the source, which are these three. Let's create a new source first and try to populate the code from here later. Now I'm under asset operation create source. I have to click on new button, and let's say it's a transportation source. Just give a relevant description and save. We could see now this source is available here under source table. Going back to enterprise model, under classification, click on new button. Let's use a sample data. We will use the source transportation and relevant model categories. Save. So now we have created a classification code manually, and it's now available here. So let's try to tag a transportation asset with this model. So I am under transportation models, and let's open this one. Scroll down to attribute section. You could now see two entries available for selection under classification. One being the entry which does not have a model categories defined. The other one being the transportation code that we have created manually. So let's go with the transportation code and save. Now we have created classification codes and mapped the codes with the respective models. So now let's see how this classification codes has enhanced the reporting feature. It basically increased the granularity of reporting. For reporting, we need to click on asset overview. Here you could see this button where classification code can be selected. Same way, enterprise asset dashboard enables you with this feature, same feature. I think I have to refresh the dashboard, the workspace, to see the data here. So let's refresh. And yeah, it's available now. The other area being under enterprise model management, overview, and you could see the model classification. So when we choose classification code in the dashboard or any of the report, this widgets, this report at the background gets filtered accordingly. So we will choose, say, all of them. All 12 of them has been selected, and you could see the dashboard got updated accordingly. We could see the impact also more clearly by reducing all the codes. Let's clear all the codes and reselect the sample code for the transportation vehicle. You could see the count is changing. Let's see this report. So we have 100 entries, and all of these assets are from Toyota model for which we have already defined a classification code, which we can see from here. One of the important features ServiceNow is enabling in classification code in Vancouver release is availability of multi-tier classification. Multi-tier classification is basically way of defining parent-child relationship within the classification codes. How to do that? ServiceNow provides two alternatives of declaring parent-child relationship in classification codes. First being the manual way, where we will use the workspace to declare parent-child relationship within the codes, and the other being bulk import feature. So let's first look into the manual way of declaring parent-child relationship. So for that, we need to access Enterprise Model Management, Classification, and let's say here we will try to first select a parent code. Let's say this one is my parent, and now I will declare this parent within all the other relevant child codes. So let's first use this child code. My parent code is here, and let's tag it. Now save it. So we have just associated the parent to a child. This code is child to this code. Again, if we want to declare it for a new classification code, we need to hit this button, and let's give some code name, say in feature sample child 1 2, and tag the same parent here. Now you could see medical and ECRI is auto-populated here, and that is happening because it has inherited the value from parent. We will now save it, and we can see the child has been created with this parent. Now let's see how import in bulk can help in creating new classification codes along with their respective parent code. So for that, we will go to the operations, import classification. Definitely has to click on new and download the template. However, I have kept my own template ready. You could see this code, and the first one, which is anesthesia and surgical equipment, is the parent of rest of these codes. So let's load it in the system. I'll tag my file, which is this one, and import. Now we could see 13 rows has been imported from the Excel template and has been successfully inserted as well. So let's move to the classification section. We could see, I just need to refresh. Now the count has increased from 12 to 26. We can also verify it from the filters. And we could see 14 records has been created, of which this one is the one that we created before, and rest of the codes are output of the bulk load. Now we could see MC101, this one is parent to rest of the codes. Now Let's open one child code, which is this one, and we could see the parent here and the source being inherited from the parent and the model categories. Here, one thing to be noted is this model category allows all the values which are basically either the parent category or child of the parent category. How do we find out this parent-child relationship of model categories? So for that, we'll go to model management again, model categories, and in the parent category, we will search for our parent category, which is medical. We could see medical has three child, which is healthcare, medical device, medical general. Now going back to the code, we can basically update this value to either healthcare or medical device or medical general, and obviously medical 2, which is the parent model category, and save. However, system will not allow to set category model anything other than the parent category or the child of the parent category. So let's try to deviate and set it to ammunition and save, and we could see system has rejected the change. So let's go back to the classification code and change the model categories of another child code. Say I'll set it to medical device, in fact medical general, and save. Now let's refresh. We have this two which are set to different model categories, and basically these are child of the parent model category. Now let's tag few models with this two code so that we can see the impact later in the dashboard. So I will copy this code. Okay, let me close few tabs. Okay, now medical models, and let's try to see if we have some relevant model. Well, there are no relevant model. For the sake of this session, we will choose, say, this model, and we will set the classification to this one. Save. Let's take another model, this one, and we will use the other child as classification code for this model. Let's save it. Now we have declared child codes which has parent tagged to them and has tagged the models with those child components. Let's see how this impacts the reporting. We will now go to the enterprise asset dashboard. Let's clear the filter. The advantage of parent code tagging is now that we have parents associated to more than one child, we can directly search for the classification code which is set as parent. Basically, let's go to the classification code again, and let's see my parent. Going back to the dashboard classification, now I choose the parent code and apply. Now you could see the report has been adjusted accordingly. Let's get into this widget and we could see there are 14 entries of asset by lifecycle status, and if you group by the model, you could see the models on which we have tagged the child classification code, which in turn have parent associated to it. This tool is validated from the enterprise model management tab, medical, this one. So let's quickly put a filter here. We could see IV biomedical electrodes, ECG electrodes, and healthcare Cigna Hero, this one, for which we have tagged the child classification codes containing the parent classification codes. Now going back into the report, we have the report where we did choose the parent classification code as a filter, but that filter is covering both the child classification codes, or I should rather say all the models for which we have associated the child classification codes of this parent code. Since the parent code is not tagged to any model, hence you are not seeing the parent code here. Ideally, you should see the parent code as well as the associated child code in this report. And that's how the hierarchical feature or the multi-tier feature of classification code works. With this, we have completed the classification code demo of enterprise asset management. We have seen how classification codes are used in models, how these codes are loaded in bulk or individually using the workspace, and how having these codes increases the granularity of reporting of your enterprise assets. Thank you.